Anything more before we get into second baseman?
Now let's talk about the second base position.
Yes, the second baseman. Yeah, so before we get into the top 10 second baseman, we're counting Jazz Chisholm as a second baseman
Yes.
this year. Obviously he didn't play that much second base last year, but Fangraphs has him as a projected second baseman, and I'm sure whatever position he ends up playing the most, it'll still be like less than 60 games at the position. I think the Yankees are going to move him around quite a bit, whether that be outfield, infield. I think they're going to move him around. So we stuck him at second base because I guess that's where the biggest void is, especially with Gleyber Torres leaving. So that's where we're putting him for this year on the ARR list. I don't know how MLB Network is handling it, but on the ARR list, he is in our second base category. Ha-Sung Kim, we put with the shortstops. Luckily, that worked out because the Rays are going to use him as a shortstop. So he would have been in consideration for the second base list, but um, he is not considered a second baseman for us. So yeah, he will not be involved in this list. And then yeah, as always, this is a projection for 2025. This is what we think these players will do in 2025. It's not fully a basis on evaluating what they have done. But yeah, without further ado, I think that's all the housekeeping. Uh, who's your number 10 second baseman for 2025?
Yeah, so starting at number 10, I have a guy that came into last year with very big expectations and really did not live up to them at all. Didn't even come particularly close. But I still think there's something to be said about his talents and a lot of potential going into next year. And that's Jackson Holliday, of course, from the Baltimore Orioles, the guy who was the number one overall pick in 2022, the number one prospect heading into last year. And it was not a good year, obviously. He slashed 189, 255, 311 for a 566 OPS. I still think there's a lot to be excited about, though. There were a couple of things that stood out. He wasn't chasing a particular amount. His chase rate was actually below league average. He was a decent defender. He's quick, runs the bases well, and at the very least was hitting the ball reasonably hard. His exit velocity was just short of 90 miles an hour average wise. Um, and yeah, there's really not a ton of actual numbers that he showed last year in the majors to show why I think he's a top 10 second baseman. But I mean, I think the potential is still there for him, and I think a breakout season to the degree of him being top 10 on this list is certainly very possible. One thing of note that I did actually really like about him in from April through August of last year, he had a 30% chase rate. I mentioned that earlier. And in September, he dropped it to just 20.9%. So he was chasing 10% less. To me, that is quite significant over, albeit a smaller sample size in September, but still notable enough to where I thought it was good enough to put in here and talk a bit about. The strikeout rate was obviously not good. It was over 30%. He had a ground ball rate north of 55%. There's plenty that needs to be improved on, but I think there's, even if he improves on half of it, I think it warrants putting him top 10 on this list again next year. So I'm putting him on this year. He's my number 10 second baseman.
Yeah, he's heading into his age 21, yeah, 21 season, I believe. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of time for him to grow. My number 10 is actually my number 10 from last year. But he oddly enough, he had a much worse year than the year before. But I'm still putting him at 10, either because there's maybe less talent in the second base pool this year. But yeah, Bryson Stott
Mhm.
is getting my number 10 spot. He is heading into his age 27 season, and he ranks seventh among current second basemen in F4 over the last 2 years. His OPS plus went from 103 to 89 from 2023 to 2024. However, his WOBA did go down 27 points, but his expected WOBA only went down 3 points. And that is despite increasing his rate of fly balls being pulled. Um, the other big thing for Bryson Stott that dragged down his overall value from 2023 to 2024 was his outs above average going from plus 17 to 0. However, oddly enough, his defensive run saved went from plus 6 to plus 7. So, I don't necessarily put all my weight on either of those defensive statistics, but I imagine it's somewhere in the middle there. Like maybe his defense did get worse, but maybe it didn't get 17 outs above average worse necessarily. Um, Also, he continued to be an excellent base runner. He went 32 for 35 on stolen bases, and over the last 2 years overall, he is 63 for 69 on stolen bases. So yeah, so I think he ran into a little bit of bad luck last year, and I don't really know what to how much weight to put in the defensive metrics and how, I'm sure he wasn't as good. I'm sure he's not at that plus 17 level, but I think he is above that 0 level that he was at in 2024, according to outs above average. So I kind of expect him to be somewhere between his 2023 and 2024 level, which would put him at, probably three wins above replacement. So I think that earns a 10 spot for me. But yeah, I'm kind of banking on a little bit of a bounce back year from Bryson Stott. Who do you have at number 9?
Yeah, number 9, this is where I put Brendan Donovan from the St. Louis Cardinals. Had a solid year last year, did a lot of things very well. Kind of, I'd say, your prototypical second baseman, a guy who plays solid defense, doesn't strike out a lot, hits well for contact, but not so much for power. And he did that, I think, to the best of his possible degrees last year. 278, 342, 417 for a 759 OPS, 6 outs above average in the field. And I mean the contact numbers are excellent. A 12.4% strikeout rate, only a 15% whiff rate. Didn't chase at all last year, only 23%. Additionally, the squared up rate was 98th percentile, 35.2%, which means that 35% of the time he hit the ball, it was at the 80th percentile of possible exit velocity based on the bat speed and pitch speed. So basically, what it means is he was hitting the ball in the barrel. He was hitting it well. Obviously, the expected batting average is very high. The expected slugging wasn't even too bad. It was 419. Yeah, the guy is a pretty solid hitter all around. He's a guy that hits a lot of line drives, 27% last year, pulls the ball a decent amount for a guy of his stature. How about a whiff rate of 9% on fastballs, on all fastballs last year? That was big to me. Since he made his major league debut in 2022, Brendan Donovan has an 8.2 run value per 100 against on changeups in 160 plate appearances, and that is the sixth highest among the 138 hitters with at least 150 plate appearances ending on changeups since 2022. Normally, I really don't highlight guys doing well on secondary pitches or anything but fastballs because I find them to be rather unsustainable. But Brendan Donovan has been a dominant hitter on changeups specifically for 3 years now. Like I mentioned, 8.2 run value per 100. That means for every 100 changeups he sees, he approximately produces 8 runs worth of production on that rate basis. And like I said, only 5 hitters have done better than that over the last 3 years. So I think it's rather notable to put in. It's a large enough sample size to where I feel confident that he could replicate it again next year. Maybe improve on fastballs a little bit. He did have a -9 run value on four seamers last year, but regardless, I think he's a very good player, and I'm putting him at my number 9 spot.
Yeah, yeah, he definitely, him having a full season last year was kind of put him more
Yes,
in the spotlight.
650 plate appearances was big.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. My number 9 is my number 6 from 2024. It is Andres Jimenez, the best defender on this list, but yeah, his offense could definitely improve. Um, just kind of the overall evaluation of him. He is heading into his age 26 season. He ranked 8th among second baseman in F4 last year, and he ranked 6th over the last 2 years. And he led all fielders at all positions in outs above average last year, and he leads all fielders in outs above average over the last 2 years. And he has won 3 Gold Gloves in a row. So, the writers have rewarded him for his excellent defensive play. Also on the bases, he has stolen 30 bases each of the last 2 years. However, yeah, his hitting, unfortunately, has taken a bit of a toll. His He drops down this list because his OPS plus went from an already subpar 96 to a pretty unfortunate 82 from 2023 to 2024. Although his expected numbers did stay similar, his rate of fly balls being pulled dropped from 33% to 22%, and that helped his home run total go from 15 to 9 and his double total go from 27 to 22, despite recording more plate appearances. So home run numbers went down, double numbers went down, even though he got more playing time. And that resulted in his ISO uh, going down 60 points, which is a big, big number in ISO because that's already usually a smaller number. So it going down 60 points is quite a bit. So yeah, I even though the expected numbers stayed the same, I don't really expect the results to really go up. So yeah, he definitely he gets on this list for me based exclusively on that defense and base running. And he would have to be at like his OPS plus would have to be in the 70s or the 60s for me to take him out this list based on the other things. But I do need to see that offense get back to at least average for me to move him up this list and consider him with the top six, top five echelon of second baseman. But this year, Andres Gimenez is my number 9. Who do you have at number 8?
Chris, why can't he replicate his 141 OPS plus from 2022?
I don't know. It should be easy enough.
Yeah. I think it's definitely becoming an ARR trope for you to be the bigger Andres Jimenez guy. I will admit I didn't have him on my list. He was my number 11.
Yeah, it like I had yeah, I think I had him 6 and you had him 10 last year, and
You had
obviously
him on
you
your
were on
50.
I had him on my top 50. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
because I was thinking that yeah, he could be at like a 110 OPS plus maybe, but
Hmm.
he was not
You
close.
doubled down. Yeah,
Yeah.
my number 8, a guy that's very different from Andres Jimenez, like tremendously different from Andres Jimenez. Kind of a staple to this position, at least when he's on the field, which he was to at least a greater degree last year than in years past. I'm talking about Brandon Lau from the Tampa Bay Rays, who, has had trouble staying healthy, but I think is a really solid hitter and one of the better. Is he still like the ISO leader at second base career wise?
Um that's a good question.
I'm gonna check that
Could
because he
be.
used to be. He used to be like literally number one at the second base position for ISO. Where does he rank now? All right, while I wait for Fangraphs to load, I'll get more into Brandon Lau. He, kind of did exactly what you'd expect him to do last year in 425 plate appearances. Hit the ball really hard. Unfortunately, didn't get quite the results, but he hit the ball hard and struck out a decent amount. 26% strikeout rate, but 485 expected slugging on near a near 30 or near 40% sweet spot rate at 39.6%. This guy does exactly what I want him to do. He upped his line drive rate by nearly 6% last year. He dropped his ground ball rate by 5%. And I don't want Brandon Lau hitting ground balls. I want that guy putting it in the air as much as possible. And yeah, by the way, he is the all-time ISO leader at second base. Uh, throughout all of baseball history, going back to 1871, according to Fangraphs. Nolan Gorman's number 4, but Brandon Lau at 237, the number 1 ISO second baseman to ever play the game. Which there's obviously a lot of caveats there, but I think it still does say something that he is so consistently hitting for power. He has a barrel rate above 10% in every year that he's played in the major leagues, going all the way back at 2018, a career 13.1% barrel rate and nearly 1,500 batted balls. I think that's a really solid thing. And when you're mixing in a near 40% sweet spot rate with that, I think you're due for a really solid hitter. I think you could easily outdo the 784 OPS that he put up last year. In 2024, 24.7% of the batted balls hit by Brandon Lau were hard hit and in the sweet spot, which means they were above 95 miles per hour and between 8 to 32 degrees. That was the 11th highest rate among the 237 hitters with at least 250 batted balls last year. I'm very interested to see what playing in a minor league park could do for him. Maybe, maybe the outdoor hot temperatures could carry the ball a little more. I think that's something that could do him very well as well. He pulled, I believe, 36% of his fly balls last year, which is something that I love, obviously. So for these reasons, Brandon Lau is going on my list at the number 8 spot. I would obviously love to see a lower strikeout rate, but beggars can't be choosers, and he does a lot of things very well that not a lot of second basemen do.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. My number 8 is kind of a yeah similar similar style of player to Brandon Lau. It is Ozzy Albies. He was my number 7 last year, and he is heading into his age 28 season, and despite missing 63 games in 2024, he ranks 8th among current second basemen in F4 over the last 2 years. However, yeah, last year was definitely a down year for him. OPS plus went from 126 126 to 95 from 2023 to 2024, and his expected WOBA went from 68th percentile to 31st percentile. He suffered drops in barrel rate, hard hit rate, and fly ball rate, and he increased his ground ball rate and pop up rate. And I am really exclusively just putting him in the top 10 based on the fact that last year was kind of a smaller sample size. He played less than 100 games, and I expect him to play more. And I'm sure if he ended up playing a full season, some of those changes wouldn't be as drastic. And he's 2 years removed from a 4-win season with a 126 OPS plus and 33 home runs. And I definitely think that's in there. He's still on the younger side, only in his age 28 season. So I think with a lot of Braves, there were some weird fluky years, especially out of that lineup. I think some of those guys are going to come back to earth, and I think come back to earth in the positive way. And I think Ozzy Albies is going to be one of those players. So I'm just kind of banking on the track record before last year to for him to sort of get back to that. And that's more of a feeling pick and not necessarily based on what he did last year or any trends that I saw last year. Who do you have at number 7?
Forgot that I was still muted. I did the classic like Zoom professor thing from
Yeah.
2021. That's so embarrassing, dude. How could I do that in 2025? Um, at number 7, I am doing something that I didn't really think I would have been doing when I started this list, and and definitely not something I would have imagined doing last year. I'm going with Luis Garcia Jr. from the Washington Nationals, who put together a really solid breakout season last year that I honestly do think can be replicated. He's another one of these Brendan Donovan types where he hits for power and doesn't strike out, or he hits for contact and doesn't strike out. But the power numbers were also kind of there. He had a 452 expected slugging last year, an 8% barrel rate for a guy that's, a second baseman that largely is known for his contact abilities. He dropped his ground ball rate by 5% last year, upped his fly ball rate by 7%, and upped his line drive rate by 2.5%. So obviously there's a lot to like in terms of the batted ball distribution last year. Which that was pretty cool. Along with that, he put up 5 outs above average at second base, struck out 16% of the time, whiffed 21% of the time, squared up 28% of his batted balls. So obviously there's a lot that he did very well last year. Garcia hit 290 on four seamers with an expected batting average of 328, which is a 38-point difference. He also slugged 395 with a 574 expected slugging. So he dropped nearly 200 points between slugging and expected slugging on four seamers last year, the pitch that he sees the most of. According to expected slugging, he was the second unluckiest hitter on four seamers among the 256 hitters with at least 100 plate appearances ending against them. Only Juan Soto was unluckier. So I think that we could even see more from Luis Garcia next year. I wouldn't be shocked to see him put up an 800 OPS in a qualifying season with excellent defense. That could bring him to about 4 to 5 wins. on Fangraphs, and I think there's a really solid season incoming. So Luis Garcia is making my list this year. He's in my number 7 spot.
Yeah, yeah. The second baseman, Luis Garcia,
Yes, the
as
second
opposed
base, the
to
non-position, the position player one.
yes, that one. Not the starting pitcher nor the relief pitcher. They are not the top. They are not in the top 10 second baseman in baseball, unfortunately. Um, my number seven is Brendan Donovan. He's your number nine. He was not on my
Yes.
list last year. And yeah, I'm excited about what he can bring to the table. He's heading into his age 28 season. He ranked fifth among second basemen in F4 last year, and he ranks eighth among current second basemen over the last 3 years. He has a 116 OPS plus since joining the league in 2022, and among current second basemen with 1,000 plus plate appearances over the last 3 years, Donovan actually ranks third in weighted runs created plus. He has also been at least 70th percentile in expected WOBA, 80th percentile in chase rate, 88th percentile in strikeout rate, and 90th percentile in whiff rate in every year of his career. So yeah, I think there's a lot he brings to the table offensively, both on the surface and in terms of underlying numbers. And also defensively, he put up +5 outs above average in only 53 games at second base last year. So there's obviously potential for him to be a really good second baseman. He he's on this list because he's projected second baseman, but he is quite the, he's more of a utility guy. He kind of plays in a lot of different areas, whether that's the infield or the outfield. But at second base, particularly in just 53 games, he put up +5 outs above average. So, yeah, there's great potential for him to be both a productive offensive and defensive player, which is not something you can say um, about everyone considered at the second base list. So yeah, I like what Brendan Donovan brings to the table and what he's been bringing to the table since he's came into the league. So he's my number seven. Who do you have at number six?
Yeah, number 6, I have another one of these prototypical second basemen. It's the first of my 4 returners from this list. This guy was my number 4 last year. He's my number 6 last year, not necessarily because he had a down year, but because there's just other guys that looked really impressive last year, but he did as well. Talking about Nico Horner from the Chicago Cubs, who put up another really solid season last year. First of all, and most importantly, 11 outs above average at second base, 5 base running runs, kind of like my version of Andres Jimenez, I would say. Although I'm sure you also will likely be talking about Nico Horner on this list at some point. Um, but yeah, strikeout rate of 10.3%, a whiff rate of 11.9%. This guy is, exactly the prototypical second baseman. He hit 273 last year and has hit above 270 in each of the last 3. He had an expected batting average of 280 last year, so even on that front, he got somewhat unlucky. Some would suggest. Obviously, the power numbers are not there at all. I mean, he had first percentile barrel rate, seventh percentile hard hit rate. Yeah, like the power numbers are not there, but they really don't need to be. Even if he's hitting single digit number of home runs, I think he's still doing the most of his abilities. He had a 29.9% line drive rate last year, and that was the most of the 87 hitters with at least 400 batted balls last year. When you have a guy like Nico Horner, you want to see line drives, and he did that better than anyone else with his sample size. So that's definitely encouraging to me. And like I said, the defense and base running are very much there. He's kind of become a staple at the second base position for me. I mean, he's been kind of the same guy for each of the last 3 years, and I mean that in a very good way. Good enough for him to remain in my top 6 at the position.
Yeah, yeah. Gotta love Nico Horner. Um, my number six is someone definitely coming off maybe the worst year of his career. Um, and he was in our shortstop lists last year. It is Xander Bogaerts. He was
I think the Padres, I hate to be that guy. I believe the Padres just announced he's going to be playing short.
oh no.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was
Um,
counting him as a shortstop.
okay, interesting.
But we'll go on. We'll go on as normal.
Yeah, yeah, all right.
Because
Well,
he did play second last year.
yeah, he played second last year um and yeah, I guess Ha yeah, Ha-Sung Kim is not on the team anymore.
Yeah.
But but yeah, so he's my number six second baseman. Probably will be a shortstop though. He was my number five shortstop last year. But he's heading into his age 32 season. He ranks fifth among current second basemen, well, quote unquote, current second baseman in F4 over the last 2 years. And his slugging, OPS, barrel rate, and expected WOBA has gone down each of the last 3 years. And his OPS plus has gone from 131 to 117 to 92 from 2022 to 2023 to 2024. On the positive side, he had the unluckiest difference in all actual numbers versus expected numbers of his career, and also put up +6 outs above average in 85 games at second base last year. So I'm expecting him to get back above average at the plate because he's someone who normally outperforms his expected numbers. Um, but yeah, he's someone who normally outperforms his expected numbers, and he didn't really do that last year. So I expect him to get back above average at the plate while putting together some good defense as well. So yeah, Xander Bogaerts, even if he's not playing second base this year, he's my number six second baseman in baseball for 2025. Who do you have at number five?
Yeah, number five. This is maybe where I start to get a little crazy with it. This is I think my boldest take of the list probably, although maybe you have this guy here and higher. But I'm talking about Tyler Fitzgerald from the San Francisco Giants, who put up a really solid couple of months in San Francisco last year. 280, 334, 497 for an 831 OPS, 15 home runs in 341 plate appearances. His defense wasn't very good last year, according to outs above average, but he did largely play the shortstop position. But with Willy Adames coming in from free agency, he's probably going to move into second. And I anticipate those defensive numbers could become a lot better. I like Tyler Fitzgerald for one obvious reason. It goes right in line with what I preach on this show. He pulled 43% of his fly balls last year, the sixth highest among the 285 hitters with at least 50 fly balls hit. So I mean, first of all, he was also hitting a lot of fly balls. He hits a 33.3% fly ball rate, additionally a 24.6% line drive rate, giving him a near 40% sweet spot rate, 39.1%. Yeah, look, this is the kind of guy I really like, where maybe he doesn't have the most power, but he knows how to use what he does have. He hits the ball to the side of the field where he's most likely to hit a home run, does it as much as he can. And this is the kind of results you get. You get a 132 weighted runs created plus. You absolutely do get some discrepancies between the on the surface numbers and the expected numbers, which is 100% what you see with Tyler Fitzgerald. Although with this kind of distribution of power, I believe he can bypass that over the course of a full season. I think the defense will improve at second base over shortstop. His base running run value was +3, which is really good. He had 100th percentile sprint speed in all this, by the way, too. He's like literally the fastest player in baseball. Along with all this, you can maybe see him as a threat on the bases next year. He stole 17 bases in 96 games. The strikeout rate does need to come down. It was at 31% last year. The walk rate could use maybe an uptick from 6.5%. But I really do like what I saw out of Tyler Fitzgerald last year, so much so that he is a top five second baseman for me heading into 2025.
Yeah, yeah, he's yeah, he's certainly put together a really productive year last year. Um Probably wasn't enough on my radar because he wasn't in the second base rankings
Mm-hmm.
because he played mostly shortstop. So I don't think I was looking at him enough unfortunately. But but yeah, my number five second baseman is Jazz Chisholm of the New York Yankees. He was not on any of my lists last year, positionally, and yeah, he kind of had his first full year and did really well in it. He's heading into his age 27 season. He's coming off his first year with 125 plus games played, and he put up a 2040 season. The three other players with a 2040 season last year were Shohei Ohtani, Jose Ramirez, and Ellie De La Cruz. And Jazz Chisholm put up +6 defensive run value, playing a variety of positions, and put up a career low in strikeout rate in 2024. What I'll say about Jazz Chisholm is I think there's really the most fluctuation in what he will do this year among any player on this list. I could see him having a breakout year and me putting him number one next year. I could see him, falling flat and completely taking himself out of this list next year. There's really a lot of variance with what he could potentially do this upcoming year. So I just figure I put him at number five because that's kind of what he's earned, and also what I think he's gonna do this upcoming year. Who do you have at number four?
Yeah, number four. This is kind of one of the legacy picks. This guy was my number three second baseman last year. He is moving down just a touch. It is Jose Altuve from the Houston Astros. Is he even going to play second base this year? Is he going to move to left field? Who knows? But for right now, he is a second baseman, so we are keeping him as such. Um, First of all, I feel like I should justify having him at four instead of higher on the list. He has become kind of a liability on defense. He had -9 outs above average last year. He had bad defensive runs saved as well. And that's tough for me to overlook, especially when you are aging. He's going into his age five season next year. If the defense is already gone, the offense I'm sure is still there, and I'm sure will continue to be there. Although we did lose over 100 points of OPS between 2023 and 24. But regardless, there's still a lot of things that he's very good at. He's still not striking out very much. He's still not whiffing very much. He's still squaring up the ball a good amount. And he's still hitting a decent amount of line drives, a 25% line drive rate. That was a 5.5% rise from 2024 or from 2023. Also increased his fly ball rate. Also increased his pull rate. I think the offense is still very much there. But we're still gonna have to see how much is really left in the tank with him hitting, age 35 and the defense already being what it is. He did lose a lot of his production on four seamers last year. He hit 357 with a 661 slugging in 2023, hit 302 with a 517 slugging in 2024. The expected numbers went down as well. But another good thing is that he's still overall is doing well against them in general. Over the last four seasons, Altuve has a 55 run value against four seamers, which is the sixth highest among all hitters. Only Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, Shohei Ohtani, Kyle Tucker, and Freddie Freeman are better over the last 4 years. I'm sure Altuve can figure out how to hit him again to the same degree that he was before. Like I said, I mean, it's tough to justify putting a guy like this at four, but I also have to explain that he is still really good. It's kind of a weird imbalance here with guys like this, but Jose Altuve is my number four second baseman going into next year.
Yeah, yeah. My number four is Nico Horner. You had him as number six. I actually am putting him at the exact same spot as I did last year. He was my number four heading into 2024 as well. Yeah, with Nico Horner, he is heading into his age 28 season. He finished fourth among second basemen in F4 last year, and he ranks third among current second basemen over the last 2 years. And he has had extremely similar results each of the last 3 years. His OPS plus has been between 101 and 105, and outs above average has been between 10 and 14, and expected WOBA has been between 301 and 313 each of the last 3 years, which I find pretty crazy, like especially the OPS plus being within 4 points of each other each of the last 3 years. You don't really see that very often, and I'm not really saying that as a compliment to him. Like obviously, I'd love to see that increase, but it just shows that I feel like I can rely on whatever performance he is giving to me, and I think that performance is worthy of the number four spot on this list because yeah, obviously the OPS plus is not overwhelming, but the defense and base running pretty much is. I mean, his outs above average has been between 10 and 14 each of the last 3 years. And yeah, in these past 3 years, he ranks second among second basemen in defensive runs above average, and he leads second baseman in BSR. So yeah, he really is someone that just needs to be an average bat to be a very productive player. And That's what he's been. He's I think he was a 4-win player in both 2022 and 2023, and was at 3.9 last year. So yeah, I expect him to be kind of around there again for a fourth year in a row. So Nico Horner gets my number 4 spot. Who do you have at number 3?
At number three, this is where I put your number five, Jazz Chisholm. He broke a Daniel narrative last year. I've been saying for years, I don't know about Jazz Chisholm. He's never played a full, healthy, good season. Every season that he's played in full, he just hasn't really met my expectations. Every season that he has hit well, he didn't spend a lot of time on the field. He finally put it all together last year with a 4-win season. He played 147 games, had 621 plate appearances, a 110 weighted runs created plus. And one thing, there's a couple things that I really like going into this season. One is that he's going back to his natural position. I mean, he was a second baseman before. The Marlins randomly made him an outfielder out of nowhere. The Yankees randomly made him a third baseman out of nowhere, and he excelled at every position defensively. I mean, last year he put up a 9 outs above average between outfield and third base. Largely like that, I think it matters to me because if he could do well, kind of learning those positions on the fly, what can we see at the position that he knows the best? And that's something that's exciting to me. I think the trade to the Yankees definitely did something to him for sure. I mean, he had an 850 OPS after getting traded. But more importantly is one other thing that I saw after he got traded, and you could probably guess exactly what it is. Before getting traded to the Yankees last year, actually, Chris, I think it is. What do you think I'm about to say about Jazz Chisholm?
His rate of fly balls being pulled.
You're absolutely right. It went from 30% before the trade to 53% after the trade. That was the highest rate among the 217 hitters with at least 25 fly balls in the span from where Jazz Chisholm started his Yankees tenure to after the end of the regular season. So if you're pulling that many fly balls at Yankee Stadium as a lefty with the short porch over a full season, I think you can expect big things. And on top of that, I think the defense will remain really good. The base running, I think, will be solid as well. He runs very well, runs the base as well, everything like that. So I am putting Jazz Chisholm in my number 3 spot. I'm expecting a big year out of him in the Bronx.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the pulled fly ball rate definitely I don't know if anyone's heard, but it's really short down the right field line
Yeah.
at Yankee Stadium, and it's generally short in right field too. So it could be very advantageous to left-handed hitters.
Mhm.
That
With like any semblance of power to just pull the ball as much as possible. Yeah, I would say
yeah,
so.
people don't talk about that enough, but
No.
yeah, pretty cool. My number 3 is my number 3 is Jose Altuve. He was my number 2 last year, and he's heading into his age 35 season. He finished third among second basemen in F4 last year, and his OPS plus went from 151 to 126 from 2023 to 2024. Much of his underlying metrics remain similar. I think his luck just kind of normalized. I think he did get pretty lucky in 2023 in a smaller sample size, and I think his luck kind of you know leveled out and got normal back to kind of his normal level. So yes, but even still, despite his OPS plus dropping 25 points, among 16 qualifying second basemen last year, he ranked second in OPS. And but unfortunately, he has negative 12 outs above average and negative 28 defensive runs saved over the last 2 years, which brings him down the list a little bit. So yeah, I still think he's going to be a pretty productive hitter. The other aspects of his game, I'm not super impressed with. But I think that naturally just kind of happens when you're heading into your mid 30s. But with him being the level of hitter he's at, not many second basemen can say they're at that level still. So he gets my number 3 spot. Who do you have at number 2?
Yeah, number two, I have the same guy that I put number two last year. I'm talking about Marcus Semien of the Texas Rangers. Another legacy pick at the position. He's also going into an odd year. He's like one of those guys that every 2 years has a phenomenal year, and we're coming up on another one of those. 2019, 21, and 23. He had a weighted runs created plus above 126 and at least 6 F4. So hey, maybe we're coming back to that. His down year last year, where he had a below average weighted runs created plus, was still a 4.5 win season because his defense was just so outstanding. 15.7 defensive runs above average, 100th percentile outs above average with 19. I believe he ranked third on the outs above average list. Um, and all of the other essential offensive things of Marcus Semien were still there. The strikeout rate was below 15%. The whiff rate was at 20%. The chase rate was at 25%. We obviously now learned about squared up rate in the last year, and his was above 30%, 90th percentile. So, all of the contact essential numbers were very good for him. And not only that, but he's still pulling the ball, which is something that he's done a lot in his career. 46% last year. He did, there were a couple of things that obviously led to the offensive decline. The fly ball rate dropped by 5%. The ground ball rate went up by 5%. And that's kind of largely it. So with that being said, he is still, like I said, pulling the ball. Over the last 2 seasons, Semien has a 9.9% pulled fly ball rate on a per plate appearance basis, not on a per batted ball basis. And that's the second highest among the 206 hitters with at least 750 plate appearances in the last 2 years. I say this because Marcus Semien has a lot of plate appearances. He's gotten over 700 each of the last how many seasons? At least 3 seasons, 4 seasons, excuse me. Over 700 plate appearances. Doesn't strike out a lot, like I mentioned. And I think as long as that fly ball rate goes back up, if he's pulling the ball, you can still expect to see around 25 to 30 home runs out of him. Another thing that's just very impressive to me is that the sprint speed hasn't gone yet. He's going into his age 34 season, and last year he's still sprinting 28.5 feet per second on average, 81st percentile. Normally, you start to see that kind of slip for guys at this age. His sprint speed is at a higher percentile now than it was when he was 2019 when he was 28 years old, that's pretty cool to me. Love that he is just not getting slower somehow. And I have no reason to believe that that decline is just a simple aging thing. I think it could very much get back to what he has been next year. So I'm keeping Marcus Semien very high on my list. He is my number 2 second baseman, like he was last year, despite a down year.
Yeah, yeah. I also have Marcus Semien at number 2. He was my number 3 last year, so he actually moves up the list, but largely because of the performance from my the guy I had above him last year. Marcus Semien is heading into his age 34 season. He finished second among second basemen in F4 last year and ranks second in F4 among current second basemen over the last 2 years. He also ranks third among all fielders in outs above average over the last 2 years. His OPS plus unfortunately did go from 126 to 100 from 2023 to 2024. But honestly, that was kind of largely due to a lack of luck, unfortunately. His BABIP went down 41 points from 2023 to 2024, and that BABIP was also 33 points below his career average. He also underperformed his expected metrics despite hitting more pulled fly balls than anyone in baseball last year. He also has the most pulled fly balls in baseball over the last 2 years, and by a large margin. He has 146 pulled fly balls over the last 2 years. The next most is 123. Obviously, some of that has to do with the fact that he plays every day, but also that pulled fly ball rate is really, really high as well. So, um, he's someone, because he pulls so many fly balls, you expect him to outperform expected metrics, but he underperformed them. And I think explained by the 250 BABIP that he had last year. That was largely due to a lack of luck. So, unless some, age things come into effect, I expect that offense to, or at least the hitting um, to be better. I expect kind of like a 115, maybe even 120 OPS plus from him with elite defense. So, I expect him to be still a pretty, a really, really high level player out there in 2025. So I'm not really taking his drop in offense last year with much more than a grain of salt. Who do you have at so yeah, now without further ado, who do you have at number 1?
Yeah, number one of the most profound I don't even want to say breakout, resurgent seasons that we saw last year. This guy was my number 8 second baseman. I thought when we saw him dominate in 2019 that was clearly going to be what we remembered as his career year. And he went out and proved me wrong at least. Ketel Marte from the Arizona Diamondbacks, put up a marvelous season in 2024, a 151 OPS plus in 583 plate appearances, 6.3 Fangraphs wins above replacement, and just about every single imaginable under the radar upgrade you can imagine. He upped his exit velocity by nearly 3 miles per hour, going from 91.1% to 91.1 miles per hour to 94 miles an hour. Additionally, he had a 96.8 mile per hour average exit velocity on fly balls in 2024. His career average coming into last year was 90.2 miles per hour. So he went from having an average of 90 to a 96.8 last year, which was awesome. Additionally, before last year, his hard hit rate on fly balls was 32%. And last year, it was 62%. His previous career high was 48.2%. So the biggest thing that Ketel Marte did last year was when he hit fly balls, he hit them. He crushed them even. He upped his barrel rate by 4%, going from 8% in 2023 to 12.3% in 2024. He additionally did a lot of he pulled the ball more. He hit into a 47% pull rate, up from 42%, and also a career high for him. He absolutely crushed four seamers. He hit 354 with an 8 for the 684 slugging against them, with solid expected numbers as well. A 3.1 run value per 100, placing 694 seamers total for a 21 run value. His defense is also excellent, 8 outs above average second base. His base running netted him 1 run value in that aspect as well. As a switch hitter, he was very good from both sides of the plate. He was a rare guy that had excellent bat speed and an even better squared up rate percentile wise. So not only was he hitting the ball hard, but he was also hitting the ball as hard as he could with high bat speed. Which is not something that you see very often. It resulted in a 932 OPS. And yeah, it was an outstanding season. His walk rate also went up by nearly 1%. His K rate remained below 20%. He didn't have to trade, the ability to make contact for this resurgence in power. There was just so much that blew me away about Ketel Marte last year. It was an outstanding, ridiculous season, and it is a clear jump to number 1 on the list for me at second base.
Yeah, certainly. That is the case for me as well because yeah, we've been in line with Ketel Marte. I guess it's more obvious for this year, but last year I also had him at number 8. And this year I also have him at number 1 because really there's really no other option for number 1 heading into 2025. Ketel Marte is heading into his age 31 season. He led second baseman in F4 last year, and he leads current second baseman in F4 over the last 2 years. Excuse me, getting a little too excited about Ketel Marte. He led all qualified second basemen in on-base percentage, slugging, and OPS last year, and he leads current qualified second baseman in slugging and OPS over the last 2 years. His OPS plus went from an already good 127 in 2023 to 155 in 2024. Also, his outs above average went from +1 to +8, and his defensive runs saved went from 0 to +10. His average exit velocity increased 2.9 miles per hour, and his barrel rate increased 4.3 percentage points. And then he was, with the underlying metrics, he was 84th percentile in barrel rate and 96 percentile or higher in average exit velocity, hard hit rate, and all expected categories. Personally, I don't really expect him to stay at this high a level, both offensively and defensively, but he was so far above and beyond everyone at the second base position last year that he is really a clear number 1. And even if he falls off a little bit, he could still put up a 5-win season. And I'm not projecting to fall off, but
No.
last year was the improvements were so drastic last year that it's hard to imagine that like I'd be very surprised if that exit velocity stays at 94 miles per hour. But still, even if it's at 92.5 miles per hour or 93
Yeah,
miles per hour,
that's
that
still
is
outstanding.
that is elite tier. That's going to put him like 85th or 90th percentile in all of baseball. I still think, yeah, I think he's going to be a really productive player again this year. Age isn't necessarily against him. He's younger than guys like Simeon and Altuve. So so yeah, he kind of like yeah, he's had some form of a career resurgence. He had some, I guess, darker years in like from 2020 to 2022, resurged 2023 and 2024. He's been the best baseman in baseball, like, or at least combined, he's been the best second baseman in baseball. So yeah, congratulations, Ketel Marte. Yeah, now on to 10 through 1
Yeah.
on the list here.
A lot of discrepancies on this one between you and I, but for number 10, I got Jackson Holiday. Number 9, Brendan Donovan. Number 8, Brandon Lau. Number 7, Luis Garcia Jr. Number 6, Nico Horner. Number 5, Tyler Fitzgerald. Number 4, Jose Altuve. Number 3, Jazz Chisholm. Number 2, Marcus Semien. Ketel Marte.
My number 10 was Bryson Stott. Number 9, Andres Jimenez. Number 8, Ozzy Albies. Number 7, Brendan Donovan. Number 6, Xander Bogaerts. Number 5, Jazz Chisholm. Number 4, Nico Horner. Number 3, Jose Altuve. Number 2, Marcus Semien, and number 1, Ketel Marte. Yeah, the I guess I should have assumed Xander Bogaerts was going to play shortstop because Ha-Seong Kim obviously is off
Departing.
the roster, but but yeah, it wasn't officially announced until last night, I guess. And I
No, yeah. I mean, the roster resource did have it
yeah,
throughout the offseason, but yeah. No, I mean, he
yeah.
did play second base mostly last year. It's a fair assumption.
Also unfortunately, um the if you go to projections on Fangraphs, not the projected roster, but like the rankings,
Hmm.
and you go to second base, like Xander Bogaerts is on there because I guess he did have time there last year, and also Tyler Fitzgerald was not on that list at all for
Because he played
whatever.
shortstop, yeah.
Yeah, he played shortstop last year, but
Yeah.
yeah, he is playing this upcoming year. So yeah, if I didn't have Xander
So yeah, so
Bogaerts.
just swap out Bogarts for Tyler Fitzgerald.
Yeah, if Xander Bogaerts, if
Hopefully
I
I
wasn't
convinced you he's
considering him
worth
for the
being that high on
list,
the list.
I would have put Luis Garcia or Tyler Fitzgerald, one of the two.
Yeah.
Um, but but yeah, so um yeah, luckily we only have one more week of having to determine which positions guys are playing.